When I first overheard my parents whispering about Kelsey's mistake, my whole world cracked in a way I never thought possible. It was one of those quiet, sticky summer evenings, the kind where the air sits heavy, thick with the scent of cut grass and old wood. I was up late, restless, scrolling through my phone in the living room while everyone else was supposed to be asleep. That's when I heard my parents' hushed voices coming from the kitchen. "I just don't know how to protect Kelsey from this." My mother's voice trembled, barely a whisper but laced with desperation. "Cynthia, we have to keep this quiet," my father replied, his tone cold, controlled. "If the family finds out what she's done..." I stopped breathing. Kelsey, my sister, the golden child, the one everyone adored, the one I spent my whole life trailing behind, like a shadow no one noticed. What mistake were they talking about? And why did it feel like the ground was pulling out from beneath me? I stayed frozen, clutching my phone like a lifeline, too scared to move. Then it hit me, like a punch to the gut. My husband, Trevor, my husband was the mistake. That night, I felt something break inside me, a cold fracture that splintered through every piece of my carefully built life. I could have screamed, I could have cried, but instead, I sat there, silent and calculating, because sometimes, the loudest revenge is the quietest. For as long as I could remember, I was the afterthought in my family story. My sister Kelsey was the brilliant one, perfect grades, a flawless smile, a social butterfly who seemed to glide through life untouched by any real trouble. Our parents, Cynthia and Frank, made sure we all knew it too. Kelsey was the shining star, and I was just the shadow trailing behind her. I grew up in a small, tidy house in the suburbs, the kind with white picket fences and flower beds that my mother fussed over every spring. The smell of freshly brewed coffee in the morning, the clatter of breakfast dishes, and the low hum of the evening news on TV, these were the rhythms of my childhood. But in those moments, I was invisible, overshadowed by my sister's brightness. Trevor and I met in college. He was kind and steady, everything I thought I wanted. We married young, moved into a modest apartment, and started building a life I hoped would finally make me feel seen. But even then, I could feel the tug of my family's expectations pulling me back. They never really included me the way they did Kelsey, and I learned to swallow the sting in silence. Kelsey's life, on the other hand, sparkled. Engagement parties, lavish dinners, compliments thrown like confetti. Garrett, her fiancé and later husband, was the kind of man who seemed to fit perfectly into that picture. A family man, successful, with a smile that warmed the room. Their lives were made for each other in everyone's eyes. I was the quiet one, the one who hosted the holidays but sat at the end of the table, the one who helped plan Kelsey's bridal shower with a smile, even when my chest tightened with the ache of invisibility. The first real sign that something was off came in small, almost imperceptible ways. Trevor started coming home late. At first, I told myself it was work. There was a big project he had been pitching for months. But the late nights turned into missed dinners, unanswered texts, and a coldness in his eyes when I asked about his day. I remember one night clearly. I had stayed up waiting for him, the clock ticking loudly in the silence of our empty apartment. The smell of burnt toast lingered in the kitchen, my attempt at making breakfast for him the next morning, and I sat on the couch, nerves twisting inside me. When he finally walked in, he avoided my gaze, brushing past me like I was a stranger. "Long day," he muttered, collapsing onto the sofa without a word. I wanted to ask, to demand answers, but the fear of what I might uncover held me back. Instead, I waited, and I watched. Then came the night I overheard my parents' whispers, the night I discovered the truth. In the days that followed, I played the part of the dutiful wife, the perfect sister, the gracious hostess. When Kelsey asked me to organize her baby shower, I agreed without hesitation. If she thought I was still the quiet shadow, I decided I would show her just how bright I could shine. But beneath the smiles and polite conversation, I was gathering my evidence. Photos hidden in my phone, in a box locked away in the back of the closet, proof of Trevor and Kelsey together. The stolen moments, the secret meetings. When the day of the baby shower arrived, the house was filled with laughter, floral arrangements, and the soft glow of candles. Friends and family mingled, the scent of fresh roses and buttery finger sandwiches filling the air. Kelsey was radiant, glowing with the promise of new life. And that's when I struck. The room was buzzing with chatter, the kind that fills a space when people are gathered for celebration. The clinking of glasses, soft laughter, and the occasional popping of a champagne cork echoed against the walls draped in pastel pinks and whites. Kelsey's friends flitted around her like bees to a flower, cooing over the gifts and admiring the tiny baby clothes spread across the tables. I stood at the edge, my hands steady but my heart hammering like a drum. The soft scent of lavender from the floral centerpieces mingled with the faint perfume Kelsey always wore, a delicate jasmine I'd once envied. Now it felt like a mask, hiding everything beneath a surface of perfection. The last thing anyone expected was for me to pull out a simple wooden box wrapped in white satin ribbon, placed carefully on the gift table. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room as I untied the ribbon, lifting the lid slowly. Inside were photographs, crisp, clear images of Trevor and Kelsey together. Not in passing, but in moments meant to be secret. Whispered conversations, lingering touches, stolen kisses. The room fell silent, like the air had been sucked out. I lifted one photo, holding it up so everyone could see. Trevor's face close to Kelsey's, his hand resting on her waist in a way he'd never done with me. Then another, this one, showing Kelsey's hand resting on Trevor's chest, her wedding ring shining in the light. A gasp escaped from Garrett, who had just entered the room, his face pale. The hurt in his eyes was immediate and raw, his lips trembling as he tried to speak. What? What is this? His voice cracked. This, I said softly, my voice calm but firm, is the truth you all deserve to see. The photos were then passed around. The room erupted in shock and whispered accusations. Kelsey's expression twisted from confusion to horror as she realized what was happening. The laughter stopped. The chatter ceased, and only the heavy breathing of disbelief filled the space. Her hands trembled as she looked at me, a mixture of betrayal and anger flashing through her eyes. How could you? She whispered. I met her house steadily. I could ask you the same. That night, after the guests had left and the echoes of the shower's collapse lingered like a bad dream, Kelsey's marriage shattered completely. Garrett confronted her with the photos, their arguments erupting into violent shouting matches that sent tremors through the house. The neighbors would later tell me they heard smashing glass and cries deep into the night. Meanwhile, Trevor and I faced our own reckoning. I filed for divorce quietly, my hands no longer trembling but resolute. The betrayal had cut deep, but I refused to let it define me. The courtroom was sterile and cold, but I found strength in every paper signed, every step toward freedom. In the weeks that followed, the family unraveled. The bombshell didn't stop with Kelsey and Trevor. Paternity tests revealed another shocking truth, that the baby Kelsey was carrying wasn't Trevor's at all. It belonged to Dana's husband. Dana was a former friend of Kelsey's who had vanished from our lives months earlier, a casualty of the toxic friendships that had always shadowed Kelsey's glittering world. This revelation spread like wildfire. Cynthia and Frank, once so quick to protect Kelsey, were left crumbling under the weight of public disgrace. Kelsey, now a figure of scandal, retreated into herself and eventually moved back into their house, the same house where I once felt invisible. Ils chose à différentes paths. I cut off all contact with them. No more whispered secrets behind closed doors. No more pretending to be part of a family that never truly valued me. I moved into a small apartment downtown, filled with sunlight and the quiet hum of city life. I focused on rebuilding myself slowly, deliberately. I found work I loved, made friends who saw me, really saw me. And for the first time in years, I slept without the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. Sometimes, in the stillness of the night, I catch myself smelling jasmine on the breeze, a ghost of a past life. But I no longer feel the sting. That life belongs to someone else. This is mine now. In the quiet moments after the storm, when the noise of accusations and heartbreak faded, I found myself alone with the silence. A silence so thick, it almost had a sound. The kind of silence that presses on your chest and makes you question everything you thought you knew about family, love, and loyalty. It was strange, really, how life felt both heavier and lighter at once. Heavy with the memories of what had been shattered, but light with the knowledge that I was finally free. In the weeks before the baby shower, I replayed those whispered words in my mind again and again. How my parents, Cynthia and Frank, had huddled in the kitchen, plotting to protect Kelsey after her affair. Protect her, not me. Protect her. The golden girl who had broken every rule but still wore the crown. I thought about the dinners where my contributions went unnoticed, the times I smiled and stayed quiet while they praised Kelsey's successes, the way Trevor looked at me less and less, as though I were fading into the background of his life. I had always been the good daughter, the one who kept peace. But peace, I learned, can sometimes be a cage. So when the truth came to light, I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I plotted. I spent days collecting evidence, quietly taking photos when Trevor and Kelsey slipped into the shadows of betrayal. The double life, hidden in plain sight, was a bitter taste on my tongue I could no longer swallow. I remember one afternoon sitting at the kitchen table, the sunlight filtering through the blinds, dust motes dancing in the air. I held the photos in my hands, the weight of each one heavier than the last. I thought about the moment I would reveal them, the moment I would no longer be invisible. That day at the baby shower wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Kelsey's perfect world came crashing down. Garrett's face twisted with disbelief and fury as he confronted her. The party guests scattered like frightened birds, whispers following them out the door. I stayed calm through it all, my hands steady, my voice soft but clear. When Kelsey asked me why, my answer was simple. Because the truth deserved to be told. And in that moment, I saw her not as the flawless sister everyone adored, but as a woman broken by her own choices. In the weeks that followed, the family was in chaos. My parents oscillated between denial and shame. Cynthia would stare blankly out the window for hours, while Frank's anger simmered just beneath the surface. They called me cold and heartless, but I saw only the cracks in their carefully constructed facade. The paternity test was the final blow. The truth that the baby wasn't Trevor's but Dana's husband's was the last thread that unraveled Kelsey's world. It was a secret that had been kept for months, hidden behind forced smiles and whispered lies. Kelsey, once the shining star, became the family's fallen angel, shunned, scorned, and alone. Eventually, she moved back into our parents' house, a shadow of the woman she had been. And me? I walked away. I cut every tie that bound me to that toxic family. No more whispered secrets, no more half-truths, no more being the shadow to someone else's light. I found a small apartment downtown, a place that smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. The hum of city life replaced the suffocating silence of my childhood home. I found work that made me feel alive, friends who saw me for who I really was, and a peace I had never known. Every morning, I wake up with the sun streaming through the window, the faint smell of coffee brewing, and a quiet gratitude for the life I am finally living. Even with the distance I'd put between myself and the family I once knew, the scars of betrayal didn't vanish overnight. They settled deep, in the quiet corners of my mind, where memories and regrets live. Some nights, I'd lie awake and replay moments I wished I could erase the laughter I shared with Trevor before I knew. The whispered, "I love yous," that now felt like lies. The way Kelsey's smile had always been just out of reach for me. One evening, I found myself back at that old apartment, the one Trevor and I had shared. The place felt hollow, like a shell of a life I had outgrown. The faint smell of his cologne lingered in the air, but the warmth was gone. I walked from room to room, touching the walls softly as if trying to hold on to something that had slipped away. The ticking clock in the hallway seemed louder than usual, marking time that could never be reclaimed. I thought about forgiveness. Could I forgive Trevor for the betrayal? Could I forgive Kelsey for her choices? And what about my parents for loving one daughter more than the other, for the secrets they kept? The answers weren't simple. I realized that forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing. It's about releasing the grip those wounds hold on you so you can finally breathe. Months passed, and with each day, I felt lighter. The anger that once threatened to consume me softened into something quieter understanding. Not for what they had done, but for why. Kelsey was raised to believe she was untouchable, that her mistakes could be swept under the rug. Trevor was caught between desire and loyalty, a man flawed and human. My parents, blinded by favoritism and fear, made choices that hurt us all. But I was different now. I wasn't going to be defined by their failures. I started volunteering at a local shelter, helping women who had been hurt by betrayal in all its forms. Their stories echoed parts of my own, and in helping them heal, I healed too. I began to write, pouring my emotions into words, stories of pain, strength, and survival. The act of sharing my truth gave me power I never knew I had. One day, I bumped into Garrett. We exchanged awkward hellos, the weight of the past heavy between us. But instead of anger, I saw in his eyes something I recognized: pain, loss, and the slow, difficult path toward healing. We spoke briefly, not about blame or bitterness, but about the future we hoped to build beyond the ruins of what had been. That conversation stayed with me. It reminded me that even in brokenness, there can be a glimmer of hope, that people aren't just their worst mistakes. Looking back now, I see the threads that wove my story, the betrayals, the silence, the quiet strength all leading me here, to a place where I am no longer an afterthought, where my voice matters, where I am not defined by my sister's shadow or my husband's betrayal, but by the woman I chose to become. And if there's one thing I want you to remember from my story, it's this. Sometimes, the greatest act of courage isn't in confronting others, it's in confronting yourself and finding the strength to walk away. The day I decided to fully cut ties with my family was both the hardest and the most liberating moment of my life. I remember sitting in my small apartment, the sunlight filtering through thin curtains, casting a soft glow on the bare walls. I picked up my phone, paused over my parents' contact, and then deleted their numbers. It wasn't hatred that drove me, it was self-preservation. I needed to breathe without the suffocating weight of their expectations and lies. I needed to heal without their judgments pulling me back down. There was no dramatic farewell or angry confrontation, just silence. And in that silence, I felt for the first time in years, peace. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. The loneliness crept in sometimes, especially when I saw families together in the park or heard the laughter of children playing outside my window. But with loneliness came self-discovery. I started setting small goals. A yoga class here, a weekend hike there, a book club with friends who truly listened. Each step was a tiny act of reclaiming my identity. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of a mirror, really looking at myself for the first time in years. The woman staring back was scarred but strong. Her eyes held stories of heartbreak but also resilience. I smiled a real smile and whispered, "You are enough." I also learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means carrying your past with grace and letting it shape you, not shatter you. When Kelsey moved back with our parents, the news reached me through a mutual friend. Part of me felt a pang of pity, but mostly, I felt relief that I was no longer tied to that broken cycle. We never spoke after the baby shower scandal. No calls, no messages. Our silence became a space where both of us could heal separately. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about me, or if she regrets what happened. But I've stopped needing answers from others. My peace doesn't depend on their acknowledgement. One of the unexpected blessings of this journey was discovering my own strength. When you've been pushed to the edge by betrayal, you either break or you build something new with the pieces. I chose to build. I surrounded myself with people who uplifted me, who saw me not the shadow, not the afterthought. I started writing, sharing my story in online forums, finding community in others who had walked similar roads. Every message I received reminded me that I wasn't alone, that my pain was valid, and my strength was real. The moment I revealed those photos at Kelsey's baby shower, I knew life as I'd known it would never be the same. But I never expected how quickly the scandal would ripple through every corner of our lives. Word spread like wildfire. By the next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Friends whispered behind closed doors. Garrett's family faced the humiliating truth that their perfect daughter-in-law had been living a lie. The betrayal wasn't just ours, it was public. I watched the fallout from a distance, feeling neither triumph nor satisfaction. It was justice, yes, but also heartbreak in its rawest form. Kelsey's fall from grace was swift and brutal. She disappeared from social media, canceled appointments, and shut herself inside our parents' house. The woman who once lit up every room was now a ghost, trapped by her own mistakes. Meanwhile, the divorce with Trevor was a quiet but firm boundary I set for myself. No messy courtroom battles, no bitter exchanges. I signed the papers, walked away, and started anew. It wasn't easy. The betrayal left scars that took months to heal. Some nights, I cried alone, mourning the life I thought I had. But I never regretted the choice to confront the truth head-on. In the months following, the family fractured beyond repair. Cynthia and Frank could no longer pretend everything was fine. Their favoritism had fueled the fire, and now they faced the consequences. I remember one phone call from my mother, voice trembling, trying to reach me, but I didn't answer. I had nothing left to say. The lesson here, I realized, was painfully clear. Loyalty, without honesty, is a fragile thing, easily broken. I found strength in my independence. I reclaimed my identity outside the shadows cast by my sister and my husband. The small apartment I moved into became my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe, dream, and build. Friends I made there saw me as I was, flawed, hurt, but unbroken. Healing didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, jagged path that forced me to confront parts of myself I'd long ignored. At first, I avoided mirrors, afraid of what I might see. But over time, I learned to face myself with kindness, scars and all. I found solace in small rituals. Morning walks where the air smelled like fresh rain. Cups of tea shared with new friends. Quiet evenings spent writing in journals. One day, I sat on my balcony, the city lights flickering below like distant stars. I thought about everything I had lost. My marriage, my family, my illusions, and everything I had gained. Clarity, strength, freedom. That moment, I realized I was no longer defined by their actions, but by my own choices. In the stillness, I understood the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the people who hurt us most are the ones we love, and forgiveness isn't always for them, it's for us. Forgiving my parents, forgiving Trevor, forgiving Kelsey, it was a process, not a destination. And forgiveness didn't mean I would return to them or let them back into my life. It meant I could finally let go of the bitterness that weighed me down. I also discovered the power of boundaries. Saying no, walking away, protecting my peace became acts of courage. My family's silence was loud, but I learned to listen to my own voice, steady, calm, and true. Looking back, I'm proud of the woman I've become. Not because I am perfect, but because I am real. I carry my wounds, yes, but they don't control me. I have learned to choose myself every day. Thank you for listening to my story. If there's one thing I hope you take away from all of this, it's that family isn't always about blood or proximity. Sometimes, it's about the people who see you, hear you, and honor your truth even when it's painful. I used to think forgiveness meant forgetting, and forgetting meant going back to the way things were. But now I know forgiveness is a quiet strength. It's about releasing yourself from the chains of resentment so you can finally breathe. I won't pretend my journey was easy, or that I have all the answers. But if you find yourself caught in a web of betrayal, silence, or broken promises, remember this. Your peace matters. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Would you have done what I did? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have spoken up? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. And this community is here to listen. If my story resonated with you, please subscribe and share because none of us should have to carry our pain alone. Remember, healing begins when we find the courage to face the truth, even when it hurts the most. Until next time, take care of yourself.